Welcome to Mishna study. Masachat Terumot Perek Yudalef Mishnah Tet. Over here in this Mishnah, we're going to discuss what we call vetches. Vetches is a plant that would usually be eaten by animals. Sometimes it could be consumed by humans. And because of this, sometimes we actually treat it like teruma, right, in certain respect. So that's what we're going to speak about in our Mishnah. Karshinet teruma, right? So these vetches of teruma. Right? You could feed it to your behema, your animal, domesticated animal, chaya, your undomesticated animal, tanegolim. Tanegolim is more of the species, right? Not necessarily, chicken, but it's like the chicken, the hen, the rooster, right? All like fowl, right? Is a better translation, right? So you're allowed to go ahead and feed your animals, right? Obviously, this is talking about a kohen, right? If this belongs to a kohen, right? If a kohen bought an animal, right, he's allowed to give that animal teruma, right? This we know from the pasuk in Vayikra, "Vekohen ki yikneg nefesh kinyan kaspo hu yochal bo," right? If he buys something with his money, right, that item, right, whatever he eats, even if it's a slave, right, the slave eats the animals they eat, right, from his food, from his produce, so he's allowed to give them teruma. Now, what if a Israel went ahead and rented an animal, right, from a kohen, or vice versa? That's going to be our next case in our Mishnah. Israel shesachar para mikohen. Let's say Israel who rented a cow from a kohen. Right? Let's say he wanted an ox to plow, a cow to work the fields, right? He rented it. So now, even though he's obligated to feed this animal, right? When he's renting an animal, he still needs to feed this animal. Now, do we say that it's going to be treated now like as if it's the Israel's animal? So now we say ma'achila karshinet teruma. We're allowed to give him, the Israel is allowed to give this animal these vetches of teruma as if it's still the kohen's animal, right? The kohen's animal is allowed to eat teruma, so the Israel is allowed to feed this because it still belongs, it's still owned by the kohen. But vice versa, the kohen shesachar para mi Israel. Let's say the kohen rented a para, a cow from the Israel. Now, who does that really belong to? That cow still belongs to Israel. So, right? Even though the kohen is obligated to feed this cow, right, because he just rented it, still it's not his. So, lo yachilena karshinet teruma, he's not allowed to give this cow these vetches of teruma. Now, let's say Israel shesham para mikohen. Right? Israel, literally sham is he evaluated, right? He actually put he had a deal. Right, and this is how the deal worked. Harambam explains the deal as such, where the Israel came to the Kohen and he says, you know what, look, you have a cow that's worth, let's say, $100. I want to go ahead, I'm going to feed it over for the next week or 2 weeks. I'm going to fatten it up and I'm going to sell it for $200. And what are you going to get in return? That extra 100 in value, we'll split it half-half. Right, so now the Kohen's going to get, instead of 100, he's going to get 150, and the Israel is going to pick up 50 on his own. So now, how do we treat this cow? Who does it belong to? So if the Israel went ahead and he did this this transaction, this deal, right, with the cow of a Kohen, lo yachilena karshinet teruma. At this point, we don't treat it like the Kohen's cow anymore, because the Israel pretty much acquired it through this deal, through this transaction. So therefore, you're not allowed to give, the Israel is no longer allowed to feed this para any vetches of teruma. Or vice versa, the kohen shesham para mi Israel. Let's say the kohen comes and vice versa, and he takes does this deal with the cow of Israel. Then ma'achila karshinet teruma. Then this kohen is allowed to go ahead and give this cow, right, which now really mostly belongs to him because of the deal, the structure that they set up. He's allowed to give this cow vetches of teruma. What's interesting is how come this is not ribit, right? This is really discussed in Masechet Baba Metziah. And okay, that's it.